A very good morning to all of you who have tuned in today. A warm welcome to the second panel discussion of the immersive NASCOM series on corporate startup collaboration. I'm Siddharth Kadandale, and I will be your moderator for today's session. The first panel discussion last week was a resounding success. We had attendees from 100 plus organizations. We covered key elements around how organizations can get the right formula for setting up high impact corporate startup partnerships. So today's panel discussion will revolve around the theme of navigating the complexities associated with setting up and driving corporate startup partnerships. So we will cover various dimensions of the corporate startup partnership, ranging from strategy, product, process, to culture, legal, and branding. So this is where we'll actually get to hear some incredibly candid experiential insights from our panelists who have demonstrated tremendous success in the context of their partnerships. A quick note to the audience, we want this 1 hour session to be as interactive as possible. And I encourage all of you to post any questions you may have over the course of the discussion in the chat box. And we will try and address as many of them as possible over the course of the session today. I would like to thank our panelists for taking the time out to share their experiences with us. And I'm extremely excited to hear what they have to say. And I hope you will all find it engaging and insightful. So without further ado, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our esteemed panelists for the day. A brief introduction. To share the corporate perspectives, we have with us Shruti Kannan, who is the business leader and head at Cisco Launchpad. Welcome, Shruti. We also have with us Vishnu Narahari, who is the deployment manager at Shell E4 Startup Hub. Looks like Vishnu has just joined us, and Vishnu, if you could join in on video, that'd be great. Hi. So both Shruti and Vishnu have successfully engaged with close to 50 startups and scaled their partnerships to drive highly tangible business outcomes. And from the startup ecosystem, we have two successful entrepreneurs on our panel who have been highly disruptive in their respective fields. From Cisco's Cisco Launchpad's cohort of startups, we have with us Pradeep Basu, who is the co-founder and CEO at SatSure. Hi, Pradeep. And from Shell E4's cohort, we have with us Rajesh Solanki, who is the founder and CEO at Energos. So I would now request our panelists to briefly share a quick 1-minute context about the initiatives, the startups they're leading, and the messaging that they intend to share with us today. We could go in the same order of the introduction that we just had. So over to you, Shruti.
Thank you, Siddharth, for the kind introduction, and thank you, NASCOM, for this wonderful opportunity offered to us to share our experience with the larger community. So we at Cisco Launchpad, we essentially act as a router for these startups into the Cisco ecosystem. We in fact act as a gateway for success for these startups, helping them to scale, helping them to expand to newer areas, newer markets, all of it powered with technology as the crux, as the core. In the past 5 years of our existence, we have helped over half a century startups in areas ranging from satellite to mining to healthcare to retail. We've been tech area agnostic. And we've not only helped them succeed in crossing the boundaries of geographies that we've taken them into, we've also helped them raise up to about 77% follow-on funding to the tune of 80 million. So this is a very a positive affirmation that we are getting in from our investment partners as well, that the customers, investors, and the corporates alike are jointly in this movement of enhancing the startup ecosystem together. So I'm very excited to be part of this panel today, to be sharing our experiences, best practices with the larger community.
Thank you so much, Shruti. Excited to hear what you have to share with us as well. Vishnu, a quick introduction, please.
Yeah, sure. So I'm part of the Shell E4 team. Shell E4 is a startup hub that is based in India that reports under our country chair organization in Shell. So the main strategic intent of starting Shell E4 3 years before is that, Shell have put a strategy to refresh their strategy to navigate into the energy transition. We have a lot of areas that we need to work in the clean tech space. So we thought that the best way to do it is to find some meaningful partnerships by engaging with startups while we navigate through the transition. So it might be like getting access to the new technology areas or experiences, new business models, new ways of go to market, getting access to new customer segments. So which is something might not be something traditional to us, because we're a 100-year plus old company. Now we are entering into new markets, new business areas. So we thought that like one of the best way to do this is like working with startups, because they in several of these areas, like startups are much more active sometimes than the corporates. So the startup hub, the main intention is to help these startups, because one of the major challenge in India is also like there are very few startups that are actually, few accelerators that are actually working on the energy space. And we have one of the largest R&D center in India. Shell has the third largest R&D center. We have one in Amsterdam, one in Houston, and Bangalore is the third largest research center. So we would like to provide access to our infrastructure facilities to startup, help these startups, grow them, and also like we work with them in some meaningful partnerships, and also like create value back to our organization, parallelly creating value back to the startups. So that's one of the main intent that we did it, and we are very successful in doing, like till now we had 40 startups in our portfolio. And generally like our engagement never stops with like only during the program time. We have very long lasting relationships. I mean, like we have been even working now with our cohort 1 startup which have started in 2018. So typically like our life cycles of engagement are really long with startups, as long as like we have some meaningful partnership with them.
Thank you so much, Vishnu. It's great to hear the scale as well as the consistency in which you're trying to engage meaningfully with these partnerships. Pradeep, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Siddharth. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called SatSure, and we started in 2017 with our offices in Bangalore and Switzerland. We were part of Cisco's Launchpad 6 cohort, which started last year. It was amidst the pandemic, but still we have managed to not only successfully graduate from the cohort, but also be working with the Cisco's digital transformation team over the last one and a half years. So looking forward to this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pradeep. Rajesh.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Rajesh Solanki. I'm a repeat entrepreneur with almost 20 years experience in building cross-border B2B businesses. In my previous stints, I have developed access control and video analytics products and built relationships with companies like Honeywell, Larsen & Toubro, Everfocus, Viscount in between US and India. At Energos, in my current startup, we started that in 2015. And we are in Energos, we are helping automotive companies, oil and gas companies, and power companies or utilities to build new business models, which leverage the upcoming distributed renewables and the electric vehicle infrastructure that is coming. So we are working with Shell through the accelerator in helping them build new business models which are non-oil and electron-based businesses. I'm looking forward to today's discussion. I will share my own experience, and we have a very illustrious panel, so I'm looking forward to learning and taking away a few experiences from you, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And definitely, Rajesh, a very diverse panel, all of you working at the frontiers of innovation in your respective domains. Very keen on hearing the perspectives and insights that you'll be sharing. So let's kickstart the discussion. On the first dimension for today's discussion is on getting the strategic alignment between corporates and startups. One of the key requirements to scale this is creating the right kind of visibility for the collaboration program as well as the startup within the enterprise, and getting the right levels of leadership participation and buy-in. So my question to Shruti is, how exactly are you ensuring this on an ongoing basis, getting that leadership buy-in and visibility at Cisco Launchpad?
So I think it boils down to basic human psychology of what's in it for me. that needs to be answered, be it for an individual or a corporate or a startup. I think that important question needs to be addressed at all times. For us, we look at what is core to Cisco and what is complementary. Will this startup collaboration help us to enhance the core, or is it going to complement any of our offerings that we already have in our very huge market that we are currently present in? So to that extent, we look at three major pillars of operations, which is the core of enterprise technology and networking that we talk about, including collaboration, security, and the likes. The second one is much more closer to what we are experiencing daily, which is the power of digitization, the power of digital transformation. And this is just not core these days, but it is also complementary along with the startups, bringing in the application expertise in newer areas. And the third most important or a very interesting thing again is disruptive technologies. Coming out of research labs, coming out of independent research as well. Things like Li-Fi, quantum safety, federated learning. So these are all going to become the mainstream of tomorrow. So how do enterprises like ours act as an anchor for such new technologies? So our endeavor is to see how can we partner with the startups, and in this process, not only are we learning, giving back knowledge, giving back value into the corporate ecosystem, but we are adding mutual value to the startup ecosystem as well. But the most important aspect when you ask me about what's in it, with respect to the consistency, is because it is impacting, it is touching the lives of people around us. It has a direct effect on the market. It's just not something on the slide deck, but translates into action. So that's what I think is very key for us in establishing a win-win outcome for the corporates as well as startups as part of this relationship.
Thanks, Shruti. I think that's a very interesting framework that you have, starting from the core, working to the complementary capabilities, and then looking at the disruptive, expansionary scope of work that's out there. If I have to move towards the startups, my question to both Pradeep and Rajesh, corporates are looking to solve specific problem statements today. And when they engage with startups, it may require dedicated effort, right? Either a pivot in your go-to-market, or probably an integration with a very completely different technology stack to align with what the corporate's looking at. So my question is, can you tell us how you're going about this and prioritizing your efforts with regard to business as usual versus the corporate partnership specific initiatives that you are working on?
Perhaps I could comment on it maybe first, Rajesh. Yeah, sure. So, see, at SatSure, we have been focused on working in the agriculture, public, and BFSI sectors. Now, the first thing to identify before getting into some corporate startup program is a strategic alignment. The kind of gaps we are addressing in agriculture is tremendously huge. And as a startup, we are focused on one specific problem so that we can achieve scale in that. But the Launchpad program was quite interesting because it was not for early stage startups, it was for growth startups where we are looking to diversify. So already there was a alignment of what we could do together, and as luck would have had it, Cisco also started looking at the agriculture as a sector where they could build a complete product outlet, and there was a co-innovation intent from both the sides. It was not like there's a transaction based thing, you have something, I will sell it for you. There was more alignment on both the tech as well as the business aspects of things. Now, coming to the question of whether it required a pivot, no, because it would have required a pivot if we were just, let's say, going to a accelerator program for the brand name. We were going there knowing that what we want to get out of it. So that always helps, and that's very important from a startup's perspective. Otherwise, it can really sap out your energy because you are trying to keep everyone happy. You are trying to keep the startup accelerator happy because you see business potential for them, but you really don't have a alignment on your product roadmap. But we had that, and that's where I think the rubber met the road. So yeah, I'll stop here. Rajesh, over to Rajesh.
Yeah, I'll just add that startups are designed for customer discovery and pivots. we work very differently from how corporates work. So, it always starts with taking that initial vision, having a broad idea of the opportunity, but then going to a real prospect like Shell or a Cisco or other corporate and validating that. So that entire customer validation process very often needs needs pivoting, or at least it needs iterations. And so the startup has to be designed in that way. It's very much how we live and breathe, whether it's one corporate or another corporate. In B2B businesses, you're always pivoting. You're always looking for that big critical unsolved problem which is urgent to solve, and therefore you'll get big business. So you're always building successful POCs and demonstrating that your solution is suitable to solve that problem.
Very, very interesting insights. And I probably just took down that quote: startups are designed for customer discovery and pivots. It kind of demonstrates the maturity that startups are bringing to the table when they're willing to engage with corporates, and the other way around as well. One of the questions that we kept hearing over the course of discussions internally within NASSCOM, as well as the first panel discussion, is around how do you constitute the right team from a corporate perspective. So my question to Vishnu, in terms of Shell E4 particularly, you mentioned you've collaborated with over 40 startups, and the intent is to drive digital transformation at Shell from being an oil and gas towards a new age energy company. So as this transition is happening and you're engaging with startups, how have you built the right enterprise team within Shell E4 to ensure that you're getting the right visibility and traction across the business verticals at Shell?
Yeah. Thanks. So I'll put this as my observations is also something that we have learned over the period after starting an accelerator. See, accelerators definitely have a lot of program management. They do a lot of stakeholder connect internally. But what I feel over the period after watching multiple corporate accelerators, my view is that the right enterprise team first should have certain kind of a foundational skills. I mean, it's not something that in their normal working mode, if you have something kind of an engineering degree, some kind of a deep tech background, might not work to be a part of an accelerator, because they have to have a skill set which is needs to think like a startup, and also something also need to think with a lot of commercial mindset to create value back to organization. So in general, in corporate itself, people generally struggle to get like a organizational mindset thinking, or like creating a commercial mindset. But now there is much more challenge where actually part of an accelerator should have even much more critical thinking skills, thinking like even an entrepreneur, what do as an entrepreneur think, and also thinking back like what do organization wants. So I put like some kind of brief bullets what I think that effectively like an enterprise team from an accelerator should have is that because typically most of the accelerators end up working with a variety of startups, variety of technologies. So it's always good to have an enterprise team, to have a multidisciplinary background team that actually helps, because you can't keep chasing outside of your accelerator team every time, especially like when your like focus is huge. So for us is like it's same thing, because we have a huge focus of digitalization technologies and almost all clean tech areas, right from the power generation, hydrogen, lot of like even process technologies, and almost like we're not like limited to any digital foundation technology, because it has always all the applications in energy industry. So people need to have that kind of a very broad understanding rather than very vertical depth understanding, and the team should have some kind of a critical thinking skills, because we are in an accelerator, always like we are the eyes and ears of our organization. We should all not always think like sometimes in-house has a thinking this not work, or this can't be commercialized, this is not feasible. So we have to be even open in actually like looking into externally every time, have that kind of a learning mindset to listen when something new comes, because generally the mindset is not that we can't really adopt something new, even even it works for accelerator also, like where you start thinking that, oh, this does not work.
Yeah,
But you have to be like open. Then you also need to have that kind of entrepreneurial mindset as an enterprise, because you are not an entrepreneur just like the startup founders or CEOs, but you need to have that kind of mindset. Then only you could actually understand the journey of the startup, and then you have the ability to understand their needs. And I typically highlight this ability to understand their needs because Rajesh and now Pradeep has mentioned that they're very clear that why they want to come to an accelerator, because they would have thought something in their roadmap, some need for them. Now if we don't understand their needs, then this relationship can't like move. It's typically they just end up like satisfying their goals, or we end up satisfying our goals. So should have that kind of another skill set. Then it is something more on a foundational skills.
So sorry to interrupt. Maybe we'll just take a pause there and then come back to this, because there is a follow-up question in terms of how you're building the teams, just to make sure we're kind of going around some of the other topics as well. And I'll definitely come back on this, but just wanted to get the perspectives from the Cisco Launchpad side as well, to Shruti and Pradeep, from a products and process perspective, right? The critical element of success is the ability to, as you mentioned, outline what those success metrics are. Can you share some specifics about how you've defined yours, and how are you continuing to measure these KPIs or OKRs, as you call it, over time, and how are you acting on them, both from an operational and a governance perspective?
Maybe I can start from Cisco's perspective, and Pradeep can add on to it. So we look at it in a matrix structure. If you think of it, we look at it from a breadth versus depth perspective. So when I say breadth versus depth, I'm looking at the depth of technology attached that we are able to work along with the startups. How can we get much closer into building a joint architecture? How can we dive deeper into each other's technology, learn about each of it, and build on top of that? The breadth aspect here is that once you have the right technological foundation in place, how do you extrapolate this to many other areas of application? If it is today agri, it could be extrapolated to finance tomorrow, or something else day after tomorrow. So the breadth versus depth is one key aspect. The second aspect is longitudinal versus latitudinal. When I say longitudinal, how are we addressing aspects over a short term versus a long term? So as Vishnu also mentioned, we are engaged with startups throughout their life cycle. Being in the accelerator business gives us the fortune of being associated throughout the journey of these startups, right from their early to their growth stage to their success stage. So that lifelong engagement is something that I want to quote here on the longitudinal aspect. When I talk about the latitudinal aspect, I want to talk about the market. At any particular point of time, are we addressing a specific market need proactively or reactively? So these are essentially the four fundamental aspects, like a matrix like structure, breadth versus depth, and longitudinal versus latitudinal. How are we progressing on all fronts simultaneously? Because none of it can just be seen in silos. And other things like funding or getting better market access, expansion. We've onboarded 6 of our startups as partners onto Cisco's own partner network. We've facilitated 77% follow-on funding. So all of these come as side effects. The growth of the companies, the revenue increase, the employment generated, all of these are side effects of the matrix that I just spoke about.
Thank you, Shruti. And Pradeep, would you like to add to that? You're on mute, Pradeep.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the most important thing to understand is when to define these KPIs and OKRs, because right from day one of a partnership, one can't do that. Like people from both the sides will have like expectation versus reality, where startups will expect that, okay, let's say it's a big company, so much business potential, but then within that organization, you would have so many different pockets working in silos. You don't know exactly how to align. So that process, the discovery process is where I think a accelerator like Launchpad helps, because they are within that organization. You're trying to bring the startup into their pipeline. Now, once you have done that discovery on products, business, strategy, key people, resources, regions, then you start defining the KPIs. Like, okay, in order to achieve, let's say, a target of 10 customers in this particular vertical. This is the level of integration required, and you work backwards from there, defining the timelines, defining the key people and the responsibility matrix between the teams, where you establish like a specific team only to work with the corporates. Otherwise, if the heat is not there, they always will have other options. So I mean, that's a very brief way of just addressing that question. I hope I can add more if you want.
Definitely. The way I'm understanding is this: you've got a framework, the matrix that Shruti just spoke about, but also from a journey perspective, it's more evolutionary, where you kind of get into the partnership, define what the scope is going to look like, and then over the course of your journey, you keep scaling these metrics as well. Would that be the right takeaway?
Yes, absolutely. When we started, for example, with Cisco Launchpad, we didn't know the kind of strategy they have on, let's say, IoT, whether it was NB, LoRa based, then what are the products. Today, we have come to a stage within a year where we have a joint global level white paper on scaling digital agriculture with Cisco, and we are working with clients jointly as well.
Thank you so much, both of you. To move to the Shell E4 cohort, question to Vishnu and Rajesh. We covered metrics and success metrics and KPIs, the KPIs and the OKRs. The other element of it is along the lines of governance. Like, you've got two very different organizations coming together. So how are both of you working towards ensuring that alignment stays over the course of your partnership?
So let me first initiate this, and I will request Rajesh to join. So I'll also put that example as the way that Shell and Energos have worked together. So I mean, pre-joining the program itself, we have certain kind of a level of commitment or an idea in what way we generally work with the startup. But a lot of times that will also change during the course of action. So some kind of roles and responsibilities of a accelerator program or a startup hub is that in the initial stages, these are about 2 or 3 things. One is about if a startup is in a stage of a product development, how do we help in their product development, designing the experiments, even validating the experiments, validating their experimental results. So we need to have certain kind of help them like to meet that kind of specific set of people, getting there like some industry certifications, even helping them to understand what kind of a product certifications they require if you have to come to like an energy market, making it them compliant. If they're like digital solutions, we help in them like getting compliant on IRM, GDPR if it is required. But this is typically hugely required if they're really eyeing like Western markets. Maybe not highly effective in India, but it's definitely required if they have to deploy to Shell, or like if they're looking for global expansion. Then we also help not only just Shell, reaching them to the external ecosystem. We have so many evidences that we have even introduced them to our competitors. So we don't hesitate to do that because we believe that as a startup growth can't happen with one customer. Generally, they need to always have multiple customers. So the journey, the different responsibilities will be different. Early stages, it would be more on the product development, getting validation, understanding their business model, pricing models. And later stage, it's like once they join the corporate, identifying multiple opportunities for them, and also in the course knocking out which they should work, which they should not work. I mean, it's like a very I mean, we are at least like in some of our roles, we are very quite clear that putting a devil's advocate role, what do you want to really pick it up? Because generally startups have the tendency to get tempted when a big corporate's offering some problem statements, but they really don't need to work in each and every problem statement. Then like picking up the right one, starting with a small POC, generally that process is known to the world, how it starts from POC to the deployment. And the role changes initial stages, like till they get like the right relationship with the business. You have to first build the relationship. Once they build with the relation with the business will take in. Later again the responsibility of accelerator change. How do you now build the business case for them for deployment? Then role of accelerator further changes. Now how do we build the business case if there is a requirement for a even more strategic collaboration like investment or joint venture or something like that? So the role and responsibility of the accelerator keeps changing during the course of engagement. And typically once when such kind of a very larger thing happens like investment, generally business starts picking it up later. Like then you could say like we have exited, we have helped them. So I'll ask Rajesh to pick it up, like in what way, like their experience in Shell on the similar lines.
Rajesh, you're on mute.
Sorry. It's a mindset issue. Have a problem mindset. Obsess with the problem and not with the solution. I think what I see most startups doing is going with a ready plate. This is what I have, but that's never going to fit in to the corporate requirement. So it's better if you have a problem mindset. If you're obsessing on finding the problem, once you've kind of iterated your solution to the problem, then it's all about matching the rest of the requirement, which is pretty much hygiene stuff. So if you are a data company, then of course that if data is being transmitted, of course it will have to be encrypted during transmission. If it's sitting on a database, then the corporate customer is going to ask you which database it is. Is it on a public cloud, which is very secure and known? Is it on a private cloud? Where is the data sitting? If it is collecting any personal data, then GDPR comes into picture. And I would say every startup worth its name today should plan for the global market. You should never plan only for India. So you must look at GDPR, risk management practices, where your data is sitting, encryption. These are all hygiene factors. But this is the way I would recommend every startup to think about. First, start with the right problem mindset, obsess on finding the big problem, and then look at all the hygiene factors, which are the fulfillment things. You have to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Vishnu and Rajesh. And I'll just use that as a segue to move into the next question that I have. Obsess with the problem, not the solution. Don't try to retrofit what you have. Really kind of go out there and understand what customers need. That's the flexibility that startups inherently bring to the table. But for this to be, a match made in heaven, corporates also need to bring in what we call a zero distance innovation, right? Bring their set of customers to the startups, ensure that that whole bridge is gapped. My question to both Pradeep and Rajesh, and I welcome some very honest answers in this regard. What are your expectations from corporates with regard to ensuring there's zero distance innovation? What do you think are the gaps? What's needed to make this work?
So we have been at Saxure part of more than one corporate accelerator. So I'll give you both the good, like what worked and what didn't work. See, what didn't work is that large corporates have large sales teams. You expose your startups to their, the sales team who do that pitch. The startups do the pitch to the business team, and they all get excited. They have multiple ideas, all individually trying to take their sales target to the next level. So it creates too much of a problem at the top of the funnel for the startup, and you really can't, cater to so many needs because obviously the conversion ratio for a beat, like for the conversion ratio will be small, and we have limited manpower. That's number one. Number two is even with the problem solving attitude that we need to imbibe, which is what Rajesh mentioned. You really can't distribute your time to meet the corporate's business team's requirements versus your core business and customer set, right? Because retention is very key in our business, and we can't just add like 5-10 people suddenly to meet the needs of the corporate. So that it needs to have a timing when you expose your company or startup in the accelerator to your business team. And this is one of the good things which Cisco does. They don't, unless you have a proper tech integration where there is defined now with this particular combined joint solution, whom do you actually go to? So that streamlines the process, which quite a few other corporates accelerators don't follow.
Yeah, Sid, I'll add to this that, it's an exercise in relationship building. There is cultural difference. Startup is, a very non-political environment, while as a corporate will have multiple cross dynamics. But there are real human beings behind, KPIs of different divisions. So navigating that is is an essential part of learning to work with corporates. It takes time. So you must, as a startup, build the internal resilience in the team, in your finances, in the time you have, raise the money accordingly, to have the resilience to give it the time for the entire process to take shape. And generally startups innovate better, corporates execute better. So if you have to make it a win-win, you have to understand this and navigate through.
Absolutely interesting there. Again, takeaways here: scale consciously, time it right, ensure there's resilience before you kind of go there out to the market, and ensure the cross dynamics between the corporate and the startups are aligned. Definitely some very interesting inputs for the corporate leaders who are joining us today to hear from the startups. And I really appreciate how we're kind of going in with the flow here. And precisely the next topic that I wanted to bring up was on culture, and Rajesh and Pradeep kind of touched upon it now. And this is the elephant in the room when we talk about corporates and startups coming together. It's the David versus Goliath culture conflict. I'll put this topic out to the entire panel. The way we want to do this is a quick 1 minute key takeaway, probably your biggest learning in terms of managing the culture conflict that may potentially exist when the two entities come together. Maybe we could start with Vishnu. Vishnu, if you could unmute yourself.
Yeah. See, the culture conflict exists in every corporate, each and every corporate. I mean, it's a part and parcel, either like they work with startup or not. Even in a lot of internal decision making, still this exists. And obviously, when something comes new, something like people have to go out of their comfort zone, there is always a frictional, there is always a resistance. So this is something that as an accelerator, see, as an entrepreneur mindset, be in a position to receive multiple no's. So accelerator people mindset should also be something similar like an entrepreneur. That's where I say that accelerators also need to have an entrepreneur mindset. So the best way to manage these culture conflicts, we should also start thinking like an entrepreneur. We should also be ready to get that kind of no's, because the role that we need to play is that not just listen like what corporate internally are saying, that when we get no, we can't just keep communicating no to the startup. So we also have to co-create and co-build with the startups. So we all know, and generally like practically how I have seen this gets resolved is that initial days there will be always a friction. You need to really keep working, but when you get some good success stories, and the situation entirely changes later. So then you start getting more visibility, people you start getting reaching out to more. So that is the reason, like it is always that you should not think of like only one option for the startup when they come. You have to think of multiple ways of working with the startup. Sometimes you strategically do something, just get a foot in a door, so that they get some kind of credibility and visibility. So there are ways that to navigate, and the best way that in order to manage these conflicts is that not bring any startup where there is a conflict in the strategy. Sometimes like people end up making such mistakes. There are some evidences that, because if you don't clearly know the strategy and you end up bringing such kind of a startups trying to introduce them where we don't know the strategy, and it obviously conflicts with either like IP contamination or like whether they want to do in-house, that becomes very difficult, and it might even lose the image of an accelerator. So always like bring something that is in line to the strategy, and sometimes an accelerator is okay to take 10% such kind of a things to bring something entirely new. Initial days for to build that credibility, accelerators need to do like to manage these cultural conflicts.
Okay, so avoid conflict and strategic alignment with a variable margin of error to
Yeah.
experimentation. Okay, so that's your message, Shruti.
So that you spoke about elephant, some people call corporates as dinosaurs, some people call us as gorilla. Each people have different kind of terminologies. But at the end of the day, I would go with Charles Darwin. It's all about the survival of the fittest. If we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So that sense of urgency that pace at which we are thinking about things. Just imagine the times of our grandparents, our parents. It took a whole generation for changes to take effect, transitions to happen. In the pre-pandemic times, I would have said in our case, it's about a decade for change. But now in the post-pandemic times, I think it's just changing by minutes, months, weeks, and it's going to be totally different world that we're going to be living in at a very rapid pace. So I think I totally will go with what Vishnu said. For us at Accelerator, at Cisco Launchpad, it's definitely about functioning as a startup within the Cisco's cushion, within that comfort zone. But internally, we are trained with our guns, right on the dart. That it's all about what is the focus area, how soon are we getting there, what is the precision that we are aiming our target with.
Thank you, Shruti. Pradeep, if you'd like to go next.
Well, the culture conflict issue, I think both Shruti and Vishnu have tackled it very well. All I would add to it is that the corporate should think like a startup. The startup should think like a corporate for that, marriage to work properly. And obviously, we should be ready for chaos, because all great changes are preceded by chaos. You use it like a ladder to achieve your goals. So we don't we hadn't had any major challenges, because at least with Cisco Launchpad, but that's primarily because they thought like startups. They have a small team, agile team, who are using their their internal position as employees to do that network. They create that network effect for the startups. In many places, like what Rajesh mentioned, understanding the inherent politics, etc., can become a bit of challenge for startups to navigate. So yeah, I guess that's about it from me.
Over to you, Rajesh.
Yeah, thanks, Sid. For me, it's a exercise in trust building. And how do you build trust when you are entering into a long-term partnership or collaboration, or even when you're working in a vendor-supplier relationship with a large corporate? You build trust by first becoming trustworthy. So your strokes must be very positive, trustworthy stroke, where your customer or the larger corporate is able, different people, different stakeholders in that are able to trust you. So this is the good part. The shrewd part is probably that, what do you trust the corporate with? Ask that question yourself as a startup, and be very sure what you cannot trust them with. Because as a startup, you want to put not all your eggs in one basket. You want to put it in multiple baskets, right? You have to grow no matter whether one relationship works or does not work. So you want to be very sure what you can trust that relationship with and what you should not trust it with.
I think this has been an incredibly good segment. We've got 4 success mantras from our panelists here, and I'm sure our audience will find it extremely insightful as they navigate their own journeys, especially on the culture side. A quick follow-up on the same culture dimension is to Shruti. How does culture of internal innovation at the corporate, you believe, get affected when you start sourcing innovation externally? You think there's a sense of laxity saying, hey, we're looking outwards anyway, we're able to get that quickly and scale up. Why focus on something? Let's just do what's BAU for us. Do you think there's that kind of conflict that happens internally?
This is actually setting the perfect example for open innovation. You have the best of both worlds functioning together, and that's like a deadly combo. You have a combination of outside in and inside out learning as well. In fact, to even call out specific success from Cisco's perspective, we've gotten a lot of entrepreneurs from Cisco going out, starting up on their own, and come back to Launchpad as independent entrepreneurs. And they've been super successful in very different areas as well. So I think we're really driving inclusion and diversity of a different sort. We talk of IND from gender perspective, disability and ability perspective, but here it's actually inclusion and diversity from a mindset. We are bringing in the inclusion diversity of an entrepreneur within the organization. And I think that is really, really valuable as part of this whole exercise.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Shruti. Just quickly followed up with another question that we had from the audience, and I'll direct this to Vishnu. Do you particularly face any challenges when you introduce a startup versus taking in, a supplier, vendor that you worked with for a long time? You bring in a big name, there's always a sense of familiarity versus taking in an untested startup, probably be as good or even better in execution. Do you face that challenge, and how have you gone about resolving that?
Every day. So every day we face this challenge. So that's the reason, like an accelerator, that's what I say, that is also like a startup, because it's very easy to do POCs, but it's really hard to actually commercialize and deploy it. Because the moment like a corporate frameworks, governance policies are in such a way that when they have to give a large order, so they typically evaluate the startup with some kind of a mid-tier company. But obviously, like these frameworks are old, the way of thinking are old. Definitely, startup can't qualify into that framework. So that is the reason. That's the reason I think I touched upon the roles and responsibilities of an accelerator. So once this gets proved, or like some of the POCs become successful, you have to build that kind of a business case, business story, has how you need to actually navigate further in order to move to that kind of a particular stage. It generally takes time. I can say that it's like we were so successful in that. I don't claim that, but we have learned a lot as how to navigate it. And now we have some very good stories of navigating it. And also, like, we need certain kind of examples or proof points to go back and tell to the top management that you could still work in these models with startup, even though it does not qualify some of your metrics or KPIs, generally like a contracting and procurement team looks into. So you have to build that story of like, how do we get valued by working with them, how we could get that first movers advantage, how we could get like deeper relationship. So basically you have to build the story by working with the internal stakeholders, because you actually end up with working with those stakeholders who have a lot of friction to execute it. So now you have to end up working with them to build this story. So I say that it's more of an art and skill that gets developed in the organization, because it develops over time with experience, both with the stakeholders and also with an accelerator.
That, if I may just jump the gun and add to Vishnu, right? I totally want to emphasize that we as accelerators, we are selling all the time. Now, internally and externally, we are in the business of selling innovation. Though this may not really be the mainstream for most people, how do we sell and effectively make this innovation come into the mainstream becomes the big core segment of what we are focusing on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. There's one question, Vishnu did make a point on having those proof points at each stage where you're validating whether this is working or not before you take it forward. And a question that I'll pick up here is from Nirupam, who's asking, how do corporate accelerators decide between investing in startup versus having a pure commercial relationship, or probably extending resources? So at what stage do you hit that mark of taking a call on, an investment or an acquisition or anything along those lines?
Very good question about this. But I would like to touch upon more on the shell side of it, because whatever I say is like might not be true for every corporate, because some of the other corporates are purely do the co-product development. But for us is like, see, first of all, because we started this program itself into navigating through energy transition. So there is always an investment thesis for a corporate. So not just like a VC general capitalist, like where they're looking into broadly like some innovations, business models like that. Corporate always have a strategic investment thesis. What is the business value for a corporate if they have to work? And do they really need to invest in startup to get this business value, or stay happy, become like a very happy customer to them? So, and another thing, generally like our investment thesis happens, why do Shell need to invest in? What kind of a role Shell could bring? So it's I mean, I would like to purely emphasize it's never about money. It's never, never, never about money when Shell invest in it to a startup. It's purely about what kind of a role that we as a corporate see when we invest in a startup, rather than just putting the financial capital. So if it is about money, money is available in thousands of places, not just with Shell. So it should satisfy the investment thesis. It should satisfy the value that it could bring also back to our organization. It should also satisfy the thesis of what kind of value that we could bring to them and what kind of value they could also bring to our organization. And at last is that if we are really entering into new markets and new customer segments, definitely like we as a corporate look into their experience, how do they have cracked this business model, or what is their experience or capability of handling these new customer segments. So I am purely touching upon this from a Shell lens. This might not be applicable in general for all the corporate accelerator.
Thanks,
Now,
Vishnu.
incidentally, what you mentioned, Vishnu, applies to Cisco as well, because you really spoke my mind on the investment thesis and the value proposition. Those are two major points that we also look at, on whether Cisco Investments decides to put in money, or should we start off with understanding the value, because today we're all highly visual. We want to see the results, we want to feel the impact before putting in a lot more into the fray. So I think from that aspect, the accelerators are helping build that strong pipeline for the investment committee, which is usually the corporates are coming in at much later stage today. Cisco, for example, comes in from Series B and beyond with respect to investment. So for growth stage startups, accelerator becomes like a good growth framework so that we can prep them to be investment ready at some point.
Thank you so much. And for the startups participating, I think that gives a good view in terms of how they need to look at partnering with both Shell and Cisco. And another point that I would like to pick up from what Vishnu and Shruti mentioned is, it's like you said, it's not about the money necessarily. It's about the mutual value creation and the potential that gets created. We're seeing newer accelerators, incubators, technology hubs, as more and more corporates are getting into buying into this partnership model. This ecosystem is certainly going to grow. But as competition for startups increase, how does Cisco Launchpad and Shell E4 plan to differentiate from the rest? What's your long-term positioning looking like? Maybe Vishnu, you could go first, and then we'll hear from Shruti.
Yeah. So I mean, it generally makes a sense for us also to evolve a lot. I mean, already like couple of accelerators or incubators are transforming their ways of working, transforming their ways of working business models with startups. But at least the way that we look in positioning is that, as I said, like in initial days, we really started this, that looking into like, okay, there is nothing in the energy ecosystem. So we first need to help these energy entrepreneurs to pursue their paths to become an entrepreneurs in the energy sector, and then locally create partnerships. Then we thought that, of course, the investment thesis of our corporate typically should start at like Series A or Series B kind of investment. Then we also realize internally that, I mean, sometimes we need to help these startups not only like mutually create value, but some kind of financial capital strategically create with them. We internally created some kind of an investment fund even to invest in the early stage startups, and this really helped Shell. Once like we had like accelerators ways of working at a corporate level, Shell also have realized that we're typically now in the transition also need to look into investing in early stage, which was not there like 2-3 years before. I mean, then like how do we then work in accelerator with this startup, building their like right go to market strategy, prove certain kind of concepts, calculate the value or the impact they could create to the industry, then build the investment case, and how do we maybe like interim also introduce to the energy investor network, and also how do we also introduce couple of startups into our internal venture capital. So we had some good success stories, like 10% of our startup portfolio have been brought like when they joined the accelerator, not only just from joining the accelerator, piloted, deployed, but also moving into like a investment thesis evaluation from Shell Ventures. And soon, like you might, I mean, we'll get some kind of announcements in soon. These things will happen, but we thought this as a model just on the PowerPoint slide 3 years before, and we really did not know how to do it.
So lots happened in the 3 years.
So lots happened in the 3 years, and I really feel that like maybe we also evolve a lot. And another thing that I could see is that like we also have certain kind of a roles in either like in ventures or in our accelerator, role something called as an implementation or deployment, uh, which which is something like some kind of a differentiating we could actually see compared to other accelerators or hubs, because you really consistently need to look into new kind of opportunities, not only just thinking overall from a program management space, but also like how do we actually look into new business models, new opportunities to work with corporates. So a dedicated role and emphasis needs to be placed, and some of the roles and responsibilities of also an accelerator need to change. It is quite evolving now. There are several articles around this of what would be the new roles in an accelerator should be also something like all the corporates also need to look into.
Thanks, Vishnu. We'll take a pause on that. Slightly different flavor of the same question to Shruti. If you had to very briefly explain what is Cisco Launchpad going to look like 5 years from now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. But I think, though I'm not a soothsayer, I may not be able to predict it very well. But I think we are laying the foundation very strong for that. And what we're doing is a highly left shift alignment that, when we are taking in startups to work with, we are making sure, even before we invest in time mutually, we are making sure there is a strong alignment, a mind share with the startups.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand is the right shift, where once you're part of Cisco Launchpad, we are going to focus heavily on growth, go to market, scaling, expansion. The entire focus on collaboration and scale is what the right shift is going to focus on. So I think with the left and the right shift coming together, I think 5 years from now, we are going to play a very major role. We're going to continue to play a very major role in the improvement of the startup ecosystem.
We'll be very keen on tracking that growth story, Shruti. An important dimension, we just have about another 3 minutes before we close the session, but I want to direct one question to both Pradeep and Rajesh on the legal front. When it comes to signing on the dotted line and making the partnership official, what probably is the biggest legal challenge that a startup would need to navigate? What is your advice to the audience here from the startup side? Rajesh, if you...
I can go first. As a startup, if you're a product company, my suggestion would be to first focus on keeping your IP yours. But of course, you can't be rigid around this. So if you are innovating together, if there is a core IP, let's say in a material or something which you are using, which the corporate partner already has, then probably you are co-building intellectual property. Still, in those cases, my suggestion is to think of dividing those IPs and having your own defensible IP. So usually for a startup, a good way to go about doing this is to have a good legal attorney working with you, a patent attorney who can help you to get some patents or trademarks or copyrights, whatever applies to you.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Yeah, I don't think I have additional anything to add because Rajesh already covered it. One thing is if you don't have your IP registered, I mean, it can be also unregistered trade secret, but if you haven't properly cataloged it, always beware of before you sign any kind of documents. Mostly the product companies, large product companies who are running accelerators, in their documentation, it will be clear: foreground IP and background IP. Background IP is what you're bringing, but if you're not bringing anything because you have not actually constituted as an IP for your company, then it becomes gray. So yes, I mean that's the only thing. Usually product company accelerators, none of them, at least we have been part of a couple of them. We have rejected a few of them, rejected because of this IP clauses, by the way. Most of them, they don't ask for such things. If you are going into a partnership, not through an accelerator, but partnership with some of these let's say consulting firms, I won't name them, but yeah, all the consulting firms, they just want to white label and sell it to their customers. So yeah, we will not go there, that place.
Okay, so defensible IP and cataloging what you've built are is the advice that we have from startups here. Just a quick check on the time. We're at the top of the hour. It's 11:30. So I'd like to thank all our panelists. Thank you so much for taking the time out. It's been an extremely informative, information-packed session, several actionable takeaways. You know, I was continuously taking notes. And to our audience, we will publish this as part of a playbook towards the end of the series. We have 2 more sessions lined up the subsequent Thursdays at the same time. So I would encourage all of you to share this with any of your peers and encourage all of them to join in and participate as well. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you to our audience for joining us. And thank you to the NASSCOM team for facilitating this. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.